All right, so welcome back. This is Ed with the Pluchar Group, and I'm here with Joe Kosteck. Today we're talking about creating and the purpose of LLCs. So maybe you can take it away. What is an LLC? What does it stand for?
Sure. LLC is quite simply just stands for limited liability company, and a limited liability company is just a legal entity by which you can start, maintain, and transact business. And the purpose of an LLC, quite honestly, is asset protection, to protect your other assets that aren't owned or a part of this particular venture or company.
Okay. What's a scenario like? How does that play out? Where does that protection come in?
Sure. Well, the law treats it as its own entity, as we said.
Okay.
So, in terms of something that your clients might be have used for an LLC for, would be if they've purchased an investment property, let's say, and they're going to be renting this out to prospective tenants, as opposed to just holding the property in their own name and transacting business. What they would do is they would create this limited liability company or entity, and the idea being that it would protect their other assets, and the liability of the company is limited to whatever assets are owned by that company.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you buy a house, apartment, a condo that you're going to be using as a rental, a strategic move might be, as opposed to just holding that in your own name, create a limited liability company to hold title of this, and then you would transact business in the name of the LLC.
Okay.
So quite simply, a lease, let's say, with your tenant, you might, instead of you being the lessor, you would have the LLC be the lessor, and then the tenant be the tenant.
Okay.
And like I say, that gives you a certain level of protection in that if you do get a bad tenant, which unfortunately, in this day and age, there's a lot of bad tenants out there, a lot of good ones, but a lot of bad ones.
Yeah.
Your liability with that tenant would be limited to
The building.
the building.
Okay.
Or assuming that that's the only thing that you'd had titled in the LLC.
Okay, got it. So I've heard of some people, let's say they have 2 or 3 buildings and they get a different LLC for each one.
Yes, and the reason that they would do that, Ed, is because to protect each building from the other tenants. Meaning, if you have all 3 in the same LLC, and somebody files suit and they're successful, well, then the assets of that LLC are all subject to that judgment.
All 3 of them.
Yes.
Okay.
So, in an LLC, it's a wonderful entity as opposed to a corporation for a lot of people, because it offers the same sort of protection, right? You're protecting yourself or your other assets from potential creditors, but it doesn't have the stringent requirements of a corporation as far as the record keeping and the bookkeeping.
Interesting. So, other than you set it up, what are the ongoing costs of this? You could be one member, and that's pretty simple, but
yeah, certainly. There's an annual report that you have to file with the Secretary of State every year. That it's fairly simple. You could do it on your own, or a tax professional lawyer could do it for you. But beyond that, there's just, like I say, the annual cost, and it should not necessarily add to your accounting costs if you're hiring a CPA or a tax preparer. Because, like I said, you're not creating a separate tax entity in that regard.
they're just doing it for you.
Yes,
pro
they
bono
can.
kind of. Okay.
Well, they're not doing it pro bono, but
Okay. I didn't know if I understood that.
It's just not creating any extra work, because the income is just passing through to you.
I see. Okay.
And there's no separate return that needs to be created for the LLC, because it's just taxed as it's like I say, it's just taxed as a sole proprietorship, as though Ed Pluchar was just taking the income as opposed to the Pluchar LLC.
Got it. Okay. Well, this is a good primer. Anything else, like on an introductory level, people should be aware of with LLCs, or?
Certainly. If you're going to consider this, please feel free to give me a call or your legal professional a call. Because like everything else, although it is a wonderful tool, there are a lot of pitfalls. You want to make sure that it's created properly.
Yeah.
And more important, because in addition to filing with the state, the 2 parts are the Articles of Organization, which is your registration of the LLC with the state, but there's also the operating agreement, and that's the governing document that you want to make sure is drafted carefully so it meets your needs and accomplishes your goals in terms of what can be done and at what time, and if you would maybe down the road want to add additional members, additional property to the LLC as opposed to doing separate ones. But It's just very important to get the right team involved
Makes
legally
sense.
and tax-wise, so you make sure that you don't get yourself into trouble. But it's a very good and inexpensive tool for asset protection for most people.
Awesome. Okay. So we'll send this out. Obviously, you'll have your email address, probably the best way to reach you, phone number.
Sure.
Okay.
Either way, you'll put that in the link.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
Thanks for coming on.